Glad you all could be out here this morning, as I mentioned before. If you want to, the text is going to be taken from Hebrews chapter 4, 1 through 9. Hebrews chapter 4, 1 through 9. There are some things in life that are just kind of a surprise. What I mean by that, there are some things you just don't expect or won't expect. Take example, the idea of taste. I just have to say, hey God, that was a very cool idea. Taste. We can taste things. The idea of taking a bite out of a chocolate bar, if you like it, is a breathtaking experience. Or take the astonishing flavor of a T-bone steak. Or the amazing sensation of eating an ice cream cone filled with real custard. It's all God's idea. Guacamole? I don't think so. I think that might have been Satan's idea. God invented so many cool things. Everything from the Grand Canyon to the fabulous light beams you see in the evening or in the morning, sometimes coming through the clouds. On Sunday night and Wednesday night, we come up 76 to get here from where we live, and we see some of the most spectacular setting of the sun that you can see. Sometimes the sky just looks like it's on fire. And when I was working at the hospital, I sometimes worked the 6 o'clock to 2 shifts, so I got in there early so I could sometimes go out by the windows. I was wheeling the linen down the hallway, and the sun would be coming up. And sometimes I even took some pictures of them in my cell phone, the beautiful sunrises that I saw. God invented hippos, He invented elephants, He invented puppy dogs, and He even invented my cat, Ruthie, the one I got from here. God had an amazing creativity when He created this earth. But God invented something else too that I think we really like, and that is God invented rest. That's the title of my sermon this morning. God invented rest. You and I you probably have a love and hate kind of an experience with rest. When you were young, your parents wanted you to take a nap, and you would go in there and fight every minute not to take that nap. Now, my grandson, Liam, he loves to take naps. He'll just go take one. But then again, he's Jason's son. During adolescence, you operate as if there was a switch in your head that would switch on, and you would go at 115% energy until you ran out of gas, and then you would just collapse somewhere and fall asleep. And your parents would have to carry your lifeless body into the bedroom and put you in bed. And then when you became a teenager, your mother or father couldn't get you out of bed until maybe the crack of noon without using water or an air horn or something to that effect. My mother used to throw water on me to get me out of bed. And if you attended college, you may have spent some all-nighters studying, taking the 5-hour energy or the Red Bull to keep you awake. When we drove straight through from here to Florida and back, I was taking that no-dose stuff to keep myself from falling asleep when I was driving. Jason said, "I'll ride with you, Dad, so I'll keep you awake," and then he goes to sleep. But he did. I pick on Jason all the time. I shouldn't do that, but it was kind of comical because he said, "I'll ride with you and keep you awake," and then he zonked out. So. You may be awake all those hours and then you just crash and you have to sleep. I remember when I first got my job in a steel mill, we had to work the 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. shift. And I'm here to tell you, I could never get used to that shift. Now, it may be because I was working a swing shift where we switched every week or so, but to work that shift, I just never could do it. My wife I was just a crank. I was in a bad mood. My wife used to just tell the kid, just stay away from your dad when he's on night turn. Just leave him alone. And as an adult, you find that sometimes sleep just may not be easily brought about. I remember as a kid seeing old people, I say old people, yeah, okay. Old people taking a nap on Sunday afternoon. What a waste of time, right? Now it seems just like such a good idea. In fact, I may just take one this afternoon if possible. But things change as we grow older. Rest is sometimes difficult to attain, like I said. What with backaches, flare-ups of gout, worrying about our kids and our grandkids, and when you get right down to it, just life in general sometimes will keep us from sleeping. But doesn't the Bible tell us something about worry? It really does. So why? Why would God invent such a strange thing as rest? Certainly with respect to himself, he didn't need any rest. We know that he created the earth and everything in it and all the creatures and everything, and then he rested on the seventh day. On the sixth day, I mean. It was the seventh day, I was right. I have it here in my notes, so maybe I should pay attention to my notes. With respect to humankind, if he invented such a nifty thing as taste and vision, certainly he could have created us not to need rest. He could have created us that way. But we need rest. Yet the simple fact is that God designed us that way. But he has promised to supply our need, and that's what I want to get into today. God has written us a promissory note in Hebrews 4:1, the promise of rest. Therefore, since the promise remains of entering his rest, let us fear lest any of you seem to have come short of it. People need rest. I read a story about a man that he was a father of 3 very active boys. Brings back a lot of memories. One summer evening, he was playing cops and robbers in the backyard after dinner, and one of the boys shot his father and yelled, "Bang, you're dead." He slumped to the ground, and when he didn't get up right away, a neighbor came running over to make sure he didn't get hurt in the fall. When the neighbor bent over, the overworked father opened one eye and said, "Shh, don't give me away. It's the only chance I've had to rest all day." Rest is a wonderful thing. We need rest, but most of us don't get it. Sometimes we're deprived. We go by the clock, the calendar, the years, everything that we have in front of us. We try to go through life and get as much rest as we possibly can. My kids and my grandkids are probably the main thing that keep me awake at night as far as worrying about whether they're going to make it to heaven or not. That concerns me. And I want them to all make it there just like I want the whole flock here to make it to heaven also. Let's face it, people are restless. There is something about us that is prone to worry and given to being anxious about all kinds of things. Health, finances, kids, or parents, or friends, or cars, or past, or future. In short, we worry about a lot of things, and a lot of things keep us from resting. Perhaps maybe that's why that promise of rest in Hebrews is so appealing to us. I know it's appealing to me. The older I get, I feel like I'm getting closer to having that reward, having that promise that God promised us of that rest. And we know that when we receive that rest, it's going to be a wonderful thing. The promise of God must be combined with faith, though. In Hebrews 4:2, it says, "For indeed the gospel was preached to us as well as to them, but the word which they heard did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in those who heard it." Take the Hebrews in the day of Moses. Take Joshua, for example. They heard the message about God was going to give them the promised land. But what did they do? God promised them that land. All they had to do was say, God promised it to us. We're going to go and take it. But no, they didn't add faith to that promise that God gave them. And they had to pay the consequences. They heard the promise, but they didn't believe it enough to put the faith with it. Think about it this way. Someone comes along and sees you struggling with life. They love you and care for you, so they hand you a check. You look down at the number on the check and you almost fall over. It's for a huge amount of money that will solve all your problems and put you on easy street. But you don't believe the guy who handed it to you. You don't believe the check is good. So you never deposit it into your account. We had an experience here like that here at the church. When we embarked on doing the youth rally, we got the crazy notion to have it out at the camp. Then we got the crazy notion to do it within 90 days. But you know what? We had faith. We had faith to know that things were going to happen. This year we're embarking on it again, and we asked people to stay at Sunday night to get the mailing done, and it all was done. We got checks from all over. We got checks from businesses. We got checks from churches. We got checks from private people. Now, what would have happened if me and Josh and Greg would have got together and said, well, we're not going to deposit those checks in the bank. We're not going to have the faith. Anytime you cash someone's check, if you have a check, the church gives me my pay, I have to have faith that that money's in the bank. Just like we have to have faith in God that what He promises us, He'll give us. We could stick them checks underneath the mattress or put them somewhere else, but as long as we don't go through with the faith part of those checks, we're never going to benefit from those checks. To make them good on the promise, we have to have faith that when we take it to the bank's going to give us the money for it. And I was so proud of this little church right here. We pulled off something that looked like it was impossible to begin with when we started mounting to take it on. And I was so proud of the people here that the sacrifice and the work that went into that event, and any event that we have, really. I mean, when we came here for a movie night on Monday night, and anything that needs done in the kitchen, ladies are always there. I brought macaroni and cheese thinking I was going to make it myself, and then we had trouble with the computer, so I'm in here, and I go back there, and it's already made. They figured everything out. They took care of it. But that's what God wants us to do. God wants us to step up and take that first step. Let's look at Israel of old in the days of Joshua. They failed to add faith to that promise. Let's look in Hebrews 4:3. Without faith there is no rest. For we who have believed do enter that rest, as He said, so I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest. And that's what He told those people in the wilderness. Although the works were furnished from the foundation of the world, God had it all planned out. He had His plan in place. All those people had to do was faithfully execute what He wanted them to do. God's message of good news, God's gospel, Jesus' gospel, is what we need to hang our hat on. And we can know that no matter how hard we work here, no matter how tired we get, that we'll have that rest in the end. In times past, it was a message sent through prophets and teachers of old. Today, the promise has been given to us through Jesus Christ Himself and His gospel. If we don't take the faith and accept the challenge of what God gives us, we read about it this morning, it causes God to be angry. It really does. Imagine that you offer your children a great and wonderful gift, but they decline it because of lack of appreciation, the lack of love, the unwillingness to trust you. You're going to be put out, you would be offended, and you may even say, I'll never give that person a gift again. Then I read a story about a woman that wanted to go to Hawaii and she didn't have the money to do it, and her grandmother came up with the money and took the whole family to Hawaii. Now, could you imagine if one of those family members walked up to that grandmother and said, I don't want to go to Hawaii, but can I have the money? You think she would have been put out? And that's the way God feels with us when we do that. I feel offended if I try to give somebody a gift and they don't take it, it offends you. In fact, you have to think about that sometimes. If somebody does something for you and you offer to pay them and they don't want it, don't turn it into an argument. You know what I mean? I mean, you can be assertive about giving them, paying them back or something like that, but don't turn it into an argument because you could offend them. And God warned his people, they will never enter my rest because he didn't have the faith, that they didn't have the faith. And that's why one whole generation, 40 years of people died in the desert just because they didn't have enough faith to say, God, you said we can do it, we'll do it. They never cashed in on the faith. But what is this gift of rest to us? What is God's promise today? God's rest is found in Hebrews 4:4. For he has spoken in a certain place the seventh day in this way, and God rested on the seventh day from all his work. God created this world, and then he rested. Was he tired? I don't think he was tired. I don't think God was tired. The rest was more simply to regain maybe strength and to look at what he had done. He enjoyed. Have you ever built something or had something? When I bought my little Nova, my '65 Nova, I never heard the motor run, and when I know the women in the room's going to think I'm crazy, but when I fired that motor up for the first time and got that little car running, it just kind of gave me chills, you know what I mean? Because you feel like you have created something. And that's what God felt like with the earth. I think he felt that way. He wasn't tired from it. He was looking back, taking credit. Satisfaction is what he was looking for. It's a principle that still stands today, and I want you to encourage you to take some time to rest your life, rest your mind, and just get away. We have to do that. And that's what God did. That's just what he had to do. He just had to get away and rest. He didn't need the rest. He was just looking for that satisfaction. We have to enjoy the fruit of our labors. With people, that means, sometimes it can mean the most to you. It's that relaxation that you get. We need to listen to this message today and take it and get away and rest your mind. Just get away from the world sometimes. And have you ever just, as a kid, I haven't done this as an adult, but I'm going to try it again. Have you ever just laid on the ground in the grass and watched the clouds go by? Or I can remember as a kid when we would go deep into the woods and we'd make a camp, and we would camp out, and you could lay out by the fire and just look up in the sky and see the stars. And sometimes we just let all that stuff go. You know, there's people here that go and take pictures of sunrises and sunsets, and that's a good idea because you're with your family, and it's not just it's a 4 or 5-fold thing because you're not just taking pictures of a beautiful sight, but you're also spending time with your family. God's rest is the promise of a new day. Hebrews 4:7. Again, he designates a certain day, saying in David, "Today, after such a long time, as it has been said, today, if you will hear his voice, do not harden your heart." When we hear God, we can't be like the people in the Old Testament, just get up on our high horse and say, "We've done all this ourselves, God. We didn't need you." We have to make sure that we take care of that. And God even ordained that in the 4th commandment of taking a day of rest. God designed the whole world to need rest. He developed the idea of rest. He invented it. Every 7th year, the fields were to be left to rest. Every 7th 7 year, which would be 49 years, The year of Jubilee was to be declared. All land was to revert back to the original owners. All slaves were to go free. And that's found in Leviticus chapter 25. And even our farmers today, they still rotate their crops to give the ground a rest. They won't plant the same thing in the same field every year because certain crops take certain nutrients, and if you do that, then it'll ruin the ground. So they figured that out too, and it was even in the Bible. And that's why God told them to do those things, so the earth would replenish itself. It needs rest also. Think of this as a kind of a cultural rest, allowing a robot or of that social structure a way to start fresh, like a new day. God's rest to us is the gift of salvation. The old people, they took the check and never cashed it. They didn't have the faith. When you receive salvation through baptism, you enter into that rest. Where the people of Israel did not have faith and did not receive the rest. And that's the peace that you get when you're baptized into Christ, and the rest is that you rest assured that you have your salvation. Now you can lose that, don't get me wrong, you can lose it, but you rest assured at that time that you have that salvation. And as long as you do your part and have faith in God, and sometimes we don't take advantage of that rest. We have God that we can speak to. We talked about that in class this morning. But sometimes we don't accept the rest that God gives us and just take the idea, God, you handle this, and I'm going to sit back and watch. And sometimes we have to do that but as humans, we're the type of people that want to fix things. Men are more fixers than women, but that's why we don't get along. Because when you come and talk to us, we want to fix it. We don't want to listen to you, we want to fix it. And we got to learn to listen. And we have to learn to listen to God too. We have to take His word for what it says, and we have to learn to listen to Him. The promise remains in Matthew 11:28 through 30. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. This rest that he's talking about here in Matthew is the rest of our soul that we have when we're in Him. We have that rest. We have that gift. We've received the gift of salvation. And the rest of that verse 11:30 is what we find day by day as we take His yoke and surrender and do His work. And then coming back to Hebrews, the first verse, the very last part of that verse, it says, let us fear lest any of you seem to have come short of it. This is God's warning, for many of His children have failed. Some have failed and some have not entered into that rest and victory. That rest and victory is what I'm after. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that day that God says, enter in, you good and faithful servant, and enter into that rest. But I want to take as many people with me as I can. I want to close with this poem. Once my hands were always trying hard to do my best. Now my heart is sweetly trusting, and my soul is all at rest. Once my life was full of effort, now it's full of joy and zest, since I took His yoke upon me. Jesus gives me His rest. That was written by A.B. Simpson. Jesus is the answer to all of our restlessness. Jesus is the answer to, really you may not believe this, but He's the answer to all of our problems. All the problems in the world today could be solved by people becoming Christians. Let's face it. If we had a world of Christians, we probably wouldn't even have to lock our doors any longer, right? People still remember that. I remember when we never locked our doors. Now you double lock them and triple lock them and check them before you go to bed to make sure they're locked, and then you switch on the security alarm. I don't have one of those, but my kids all have them in their houses, so. But God and Jesus is the answer to that rest. Life is restlessness, really, when you come right down to it, if you really look at it. But we have to take the good with the bad, and we have to know how to mix the two together and make it all good. If you're here this morning and you need to receive that gift of salvation with baptism, we can do that for you. Or if you have already been baptized and you have found that you're not seeking that rest any longer, please come as we stand and sing. If you are tired